Hi, welcome to my video on the review of quadratic equations solved by different methods. And as in all my reviews, this review also can be treated as a quiz where you give yourself a mark to see how well you know this unit. And the total number of marks on this quiz is 47 that you can convert to a decimal and then to percent. And this is the first page, 1 of 6. So let's start the review on the videos that we've done on solving by different methods. And the questions are in order of the videos. Here we go. The product of 0 and any expression is 0 times any number is 0. Give yourself a mark if you got 0. Number 2, solve for x. We have a product. If two numbers are multiplied to give you 0, then one of the numbers is 0 or both of the numbers is 0. So we can let 2x equals 0 or x minus 4 equals 0. Divide by 2, x equals 0. And x minus 4 equals 0, so x equals 4. We move it to the right. So the two answers are 0 and 4. There's two of them because if you multiply, you get 2x squared, and x squared is a quadratic, 2 roots. Mark for each answer. Number 2, again, two expressions multiplied to give you 0, then each one can be equal to 0. So we let each one equal 0, and we take our time and solve it. 5x equals negative 6, divide by 5. They cancel out, x equals negative 6 over 5. 3x equals 4, move it to the right, make it positive, and divide by 3. They cancel, x equals 4 over 3. Again, 2 marks, 1 for each answer. Again, you let each of these equal 0 and solve them. And remember, if you plug whatever one you plug back in here, substitute back in, you'll get a 0 in one of these. If you plug 4 over 3 back in here and here, you put the 4 over 3 back into both x's, the 0 will become right here. So 0 times this number, whatever it is, will give you a 0. And C, 4 times x plus 2 times x minus 7 equals 0. The 4 equals 0, we can say it, but it's not true. So the 4 has no bearing on the 0. So x plus 2 is equal to 0, or x minus 7 equals 0. X equals negative 2, x equals 7. So these are the two zeros. Again, if you take the negative 2 and sub it in here and here, put the negative 2 in both x's. Put a negative 2 here, you get a 0. Put a negative 2 here, you get a negative 9. So 4 times 0 times negative 9 is a 0. Or 7 works. If you put 7 here and 7 here, you take the 7 and put it in both. So 7 minus 0 is 0. 7 plus 2 is 9. And 4. 4 times 9, 36 times 0, 0. If one of these is a 0, then the product is a 0. 2 marks, 1 for each. Is a negative 2 a root of this equation? Well, that means you put negative 2 in the place of x. And if it works out, then it's true. So negative 2 is going into place of x. And we square first by PEMDAS. We get a 4. Notice I squared first. I'm obeying PEMDAS. P-E-M-D-A-S. That's an E and that's a P. The brackets can't be done. We do the exponent first. So I did the exponent first. Now I'm going to do multiplication, division, left to right. So that's a multiply. So I get a 12 plus 22 minus 4. So I multiply P-E-M. That's a D-A-S, multiplication, division. Now I add and subtract. 30, that's 34 minus 4 is 30 equals 0. No. They didn't work out to be each side equal. So, no, it's not a root. Give yourself a mark if you have a no, and worked it out. Change each equation to ax squared plus bx plus c, where a is greater than 0. No fractions or decimals. Remember, when I solve a quadratic, I do not want a to be negative. And that's if you work that way all the time, then the math will become easier to do, and no fractions or decimals. So because I have a negative, first I'm going to do is write it in the right order. So I want ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. The 6 becomes negative when you move it to the right. Now I'm going to multiply through by negative 1. Negative 1 times all these numbers or terms, we get positive x squared, negative 4x plus 6, and a negative 1 times 0 is 0. So if you have this equation, is the right order. No negative a, no fraction, no decimals. Give yourself a mark. Total up your page out of 9. Hopefully you got 9 out of 9. And if you do make an error, then go back and review. Make sure you find out where your errors are. Correct them. Change to ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, where a is greater than 0, no fractions, no decimals. Notice we have a fraction. The LCD for 2 and 4 is 4. So we're going to multiply each part of the equation by 4. Multiplying by 4 eliminates the denominator. 2 goes into 4 twice. We get a 6x squared. 4 goes into 4 once. 1 times 1 is 1x. And negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. And 4 times 0 is 0. So we have ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. A is not negative and no fractions or decimals. Give yourself a mark. C, write it in this form, we have to expand it out. That means we have to do FOIL. First, 5x squared. Outside, negative 15x. Inside, plus 2x. Outside. First, outside, inside, last. It's negative, last is negative 6. First, outside, inside, last. Done. And we simplify. 5x squared minus 13x minus 6 equals 0. So I multiply by FOIL and I simplified. Give yourself a mark if you have this equation. Number 5, solve each by factoring. Factoring is one of the methods to solve. And when you factor, it has to be equal to 0, which we do. And first rule in factoring, the first rule of factoring is the GCF. Is there a GCF in these two terms? Yes. So we take the x out. X squared divided by x is x. Negative 6x divided by x is negative 6 equals 0. We have two factors multiplied to give you 0. So x is 0 or x minus 6 equals 0. X is 6. Move this negative over, it becomes positive. So the two answers are 0 and 6. If you got each one, give yourself 2 marks. Solve by factoring. We want to solve this one by factoring. Notice now we have a 2 here. 2 is not a GCF. So when we have a 2 here, it's much a little bit more difficult, not too bad. When there's a 2 here, we go 2 times 3 is 6, because that's the A times the C, and the sum is the B, which is 7. So what's the factors of 6? 6 times 1 or 3 times 2. Which pair of factors give me a 7? 6 and 1. And notice the product is positive and the sum is positive, so the two numbers are 6 and 1. So what we do, we split the 7x into with these two, which is a 6x plus 1x. So these two factors are going in here and add together to give you the 7x. So an x goes with each of these factors. Now we break it up into what we call grouping. In these first two, I see a GCF of 2x. I take it out, I get an x plus 3. In these two, I see a plus, whatever that sign is there goes here, and a GCF is 1. So when I take each of these and divide by plus 1, I get an x plus 3. Notice that x plus 3 is common. That's a binomial GCF. Take it out. And what's left is 2x plus 1. Now I have the two factors being multiplied to give you 0, just like these two here. So I have an x plus 3 equals 0, or 2x plus 2x plus 1 equals 0. So x is negative 3, or 2x minus equals negative 1 divided by 2, and x equals a negative a half. Again, we solved it by factoring, but later on, you could solve this by quadratic formula. Either you do it by factoring. I wouldn't do this by completing the square, even though I would either try to factor it or use the quadratic formula. Completing the square doesn't work out too well when you have a 2 here that won't divide through. So we solved it by factoring. Negative 3 and a negative a half are the two answers, 1 mark each. Again, I solved it by factoring. But in a quiz that you're going to do, you can solve by whatever method you want. I just wanted factoring here. And that's what the teacher sometimes will ask. Solve it by this method to see if you can do that method. But if you have your choice, you can do what you want. Your choice. C. Simplify this equation. X times x squared. X times negative 9, negative 9x. Negative 2 times x, negative 2x. Negative 2 times 5, negative 10, plus 4. And x squared minus 9x. I'm going to simplify this side. The reason I simplify because I have less to transpose. So descending order, bring all the terms to the left side, and as you move them over, minus becomes a plus, minus becomes a plus. X squared minus 7x plus 6 equals 0. Notice these are like terms, so I added them to get a negative 7. Now I have a 1. When you got a 1, notice up here we had a 2, which wasn't a GCF, so we had to do all this work. But now, because there's a is 1, this is easy to factor. So x squared is x and x. The factors of 6 are 6 and 1, or 3 and 2. 6 and 1 will give me the 7. Because the product is a positive 6 and the sum is negative 7, I will have two negatives. Multiply, positive 6, add, negative 7. So x minus 6 equals 0, or x minus 1 equals 0. So x equals 6, or x equals 1. So there's three answers. If you simplified this equation to this, you get a mark. If you factor them correctly, you get a mark. So 1 mark for this equation and 1 mark for each answer, 3 marks in total. 9 marks for the page. Hopefully everything is going great. Number 6, simplify. Simplify the square root of x plus 2 all squared, and the answer is just x plus 2. Because the square root of this squared is whatever is underneath this square here. And number 7, A part, solve for x. And this is a property. Notice there's no x in the middle. So what we can do is go 3x squared equals 12. Divide by 3. So we get 3's cancel out. X squared equals 4. Now we have the square root of x squared equals plus or minus the square root of 4. X is equal to plus or minus 2. So x is 2, or x equals negative 2. Notice I did, because the x is missing, I can move the 12 over and work out the square root. This is what we call the square root property. If the x is missing, we can move the 12 or the number and work it out easier. And again here, 2x squared equals negative 36. We move the 36 over. Divide by negative 2. It cancels. X squared equals negative 36 divided by negative 2 is 18. And the square root of x squared equals plus or minus the square root of 18. And square root of x squared is x. Plus or minus 18 is 9 times 2. So that's a 3 root 2. So x is 3 root 2 or negative 3 root 2. This is okay as an answer, or you can give these two, your choice. So it's a mark each. So 2 marks for this for each answer, 2 marks for each answer, or mark for each answer for both of these. So you get 2 marks in total. And this is a variation of it, only we have, notice right here we got an x being squared. Now we got x plus 4 squared. So what we can do is leave the x plus 4, move the 9 over, and then we can do the square root of both sides. Plus minus the root 9. So square root of x plus 4 squared is x plus 4. Square root of 9 is 3. Plus minus 3, so that gives us x equals negative 4 plus or minus 3. So x equals negative 4 plus 3 or negative 4 minus 3. So x equals negative 1 or negative 7. Two answers. If you got each answer correct, notice it's a variation of the square root property. Because that's a square, easy to move the 9 over and then do plus minus the root. Works out. If you ever see it, do it that way. Another possibility is that you could FOIL this out, subtract the 9, and then factor that trinomial if there is one. That's another way, but it's longer. Number 8, express each as a perfect square trinomial. So the perfect square trinomial, when we have it here, the term is, what we do, we take the middle term b, divide by 2 and square it. So b is 8, so we take the 8, divide by 2 and square it. So that's a 4 squared, so that gives us 16. So plus 16. The perfect square trinomial is you had to add 16 on. Give yourself a mark. The perfect square trinomial here is to take the negative 5, divide it by 2 and square it. So notice that's negative 5 times negative 5 is 25. 2 times 2 is 4. So we add on 25 over 4. That's a perfect square trinomial. And again, we didn't have to do it, but I'm going to factor this. This is x squared, this is an x. And what was this number before we squared it? Plus 4. And this one is an x. And what was this number before we squared it? A negative 5 over 2. So we go x minus 5 over 2 squared, we'll get this trinomial. X plus 4 squared, we'll get this trinomial. So what goes right here is b over 2. b over 2 goes right here. Whatever b is, divided by 2. That's what. And this one is b is root 3 over 2 squared. Root 3 times root 3 is 3. 2 times 2 is 4. So this is a plus 3/4. Again, b is root 3. So it's root 3 over 2 squared. And if you had to factor that, this would be, what is? That's a plus 3 over 2. So whatever this is your b over 2. That's going right here. If you had to factor, but we didn't. We just had to put the 16, the plus 25 over 4, and the plus 3/4. And add it up as a mark out of 10. Let's continue. Now we have another method, solve by completing the square. Oh, here we go. When we complete the square, we have to have this coefficient of 1. So we already have a 1. So we move the 2 over, make it plus. This is a 1 that we already want. So to complete the square, here we go. Again, we take a half of the negative 6 and square it. So that's negative 3 squared is a plus 9. So we add the plus 9 to both sides. And the factorization of this trinomial is x. And what's a half of this number? Negative 3. And that's 11. So now we do square root of x plus 3 squared equals plus minus the root of 11. So that's x minus 3 plus minus the root of 11 cannot simplify because it's a prime number. X equals 3 plus or minus root 11. So it's 2 marks, 1 for each answer. Or you can break them down, 3 plus root 11 or 3 minus root 11. There's 2 of them. Mark each. B, we want to complete the square. So first of all, we'll move the constant term to the right side and make it a negative. Now, A should be 1. So we'll divide all terms by negative 3. cancels out, x squared. Cancels, plus 5x. And cancels to get a 1. So we move the 3 over to make it negative, and we want a to be 1 when we complete the square. So, what do we get? Let's see. We want to complete the square. Let's see. B is 5, so it's 5 divided by 2 squared. So that's a 25 over 4. So I'll put 25 over 4 on each side. Done. Now I'll factor this. So that's x. What's a half of this? A half of this number is a positive 5 over 2. That's what goes right there, squared. And we add this up. A 1 is a 4 over 4 plus 25 over 4. 1 is 4 over 4, so that's a 29 over 4. Okay, we add those together. So this is the square root of x plus 5 over 2 squared plus or minus the square root of 29 over 4. So that's x plus 5 over 2 when we do the square root, plus or minus. The square root of 29, we can't do it because it's prime. Square root of 4 is 2. So this is negative 5 over 2 plus or minus the square root of 29 over 2. And again, there's two roots. Negative 5, you could go negative 5 over 2 plus the root of 29 over 2, or negative 5 over 2 minus the root of 29 over 2. And there's three answers here, or 3 marks, sorry. If you get this equation, if you get to here, you get writing in this form, give yourself a mark. And if you got to here, you give a mark each. So 3 marks in total. Number 10, solve by the quadratic formula. And remember, the quadratic formula is, we need the quadratic formula, we need it in what form? We need it into this form. The quadratic formula has to be ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, where a is not negative and no fractions or decimals. And the quadratic formula is x equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And what's a is 1, b is negative 4, c is negative 4. So b is negative 4, so it's the negative of a negative 4. B is negative 4. A is 1. C is negative 4. All over 2 times A is 2 times 1. So simplify that. The negative of a negative is a positive. Now I'm going to work all this out. And 2 times 1 is 2. So let's work this out right here. So you have to square this first. Negative 4 squared is 16. Then you multiply negative 4 times 1 times negative 4, because you got to square first and then multiply after. That gives you 16. So that gives you a 32 right there. And let's continue. 32 is 16 times 2. Or you can break it right down. If you want, you can let's break 32 down. 32. 2 to 32 goes 16. So we get 16, so it's a 16 times 2. So it's a 4. Square root of 16 is 4, so it's a 4 root 2 over 2. We can't add or subtract these, so 4 over 2 plus or minus 4 root 2 over 2. So that's 2 plus or minus 2 root 2. And then that's the 2 roots. Again, the 2 of them are x is 2 plus 2 root 2 or 2 minus 2 root 2. 2 minus 2 root 2. And we get 4 marks. So if you write the equation in this form, you get a mark. If you plug it into the quadratic formula, here you get a mark. If you simplified it to far as here, you get a mark. And if you got the final answers, you get a mark. So 4 marks in total. B, solved by the quadratic formula. I was going to look up there then. So we have it in the right order. We have A to be okay, A1. So A is 1, B is 6, C is 13. So in the quadratic formula, as long as we have ax squared plus bx plus c, it makes no difference. As long as we have it in this form where a is positive. And if you got fractions, get rid of them. You got decimals, get rid of them. Makes it easier. So everything is perfect. X equals negative b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So b is 6, so it's the negative of 6 plus or minus 6 squared. A is 1. C is 13. 2 times 1. So that gives us the negative of a 6 is negative 6 plus or minus. Let's work this out. 2 times 1 is 2. So what does this give us? That gives us 6 squared is 36. And 4 times negative 4 times 13 is a negative 52. And that gives us how much? 18. Let's see, 16, negative 16. Okay, let's see, 52 subtract 36 is 6, yeah, 16 negative. Perfect. Sometimes your brain don't work as in mine. I find mine sometimes you make those little errors in thinking. So 36 subtract 52 is negative 16. So it's a negative 6. The square root of 16 is 4, and the square root of a negative number is an I. So this becomes negative. You can't add or subtract them, so you go negative 6 over 2 plus or minus 4i over 2. So that's negative 3 plus or minus 2i. And the roots are negative 3 plus 2i, negative 3 minus 2i. And you got 4 marks. So if you subbed into the formula correctly, if you worked it as far as here correctly, if you have this, you get a mark, and if you got the 2 of these, you get another mark. So 4 marks altogether. And total up your page out of 13. And a couple more questions on the last video. Find the value of k if negative 3 is a root of this. So if negative 3 is a root, that means x equals negative 3. So I can sub negative 3 in the place of x. Negative 3 is a root, so when we sub a negative 3 into the equation for x, it makes the equation true. So that's negative 3 squared is a 9. And so I notice I'm only doing the square first, PEMDAS. So I did P-E-M-D-A-S. You can't do anything inside the brackets. You got to do the exponent first, 9. Now, we'll do the multiplication division. So I have to multiply here before I add. So that gives me 9k. Negative 3 times k, negative 3 times 9, negative 27. And we simplify the left side, so it's a 6k, and it gives me a negative 12. 27 15 is negative 12. So 6k equals 12. When we move it to the right, change the sign, divide by 6. 6 cancels. 6 cancels here to give me a 2. So k is 2. So if you put 2 back in here and put a 2 here and you factored it by whatever means, you will get a negative 3 as a root. So if you subbed it into the equation correctly and you come up with this line, you get 1. If you got 1, you get 1. So 2 in total. 1, 1. 4 is the root of this equation. Find the other root. Now, I got a k in here. So what I should do, if 4 is a root, take the 4 and sub it in. Take the 4 and sub it in for x. I was going to continue on then. So I'm going to sub the 4 in for x. So if I sub 4 in, I should find the value of k. 16. Okay, I'm doing one step at a time by PEMDAS. I'm doing my exponent first. Done. Now, I will multiply next. So 4 times k, 4k, 4 times -2, -8. Okay, simplify. I'm going to add my like terms. So k and 4k is 8k, 16 -8 is 8. So 8k is -8, divided by 8, and k is -1. So now I have k to be -1. So let's put the -1 back in. So x squared. So I'm going to write down the equation. So it says k is -1. Take your time. Just think you're putting in. Notice I put the root in here. I put 4 in the place of x here and here and worked it out and got k to be -1. Now to get the other root, I had to take the -1 and sub in the place of k. So I'm subbing -1 here and then -1 here. Now I'm going to work this out. X squared, that's a -3x, and that's a -4 equals 0. So because that's an x squared, I got an x and an x. And the factors of 4 to give me a 3 are 4 and 1. 2 and 2 won't do it. So I got a -4 and a +1. So x minus 4 equals 0. So x is 4. X plus 1 equals 0. X is -1. So we said we started out with 4 as a root. So therefore the other root, so when we put the -1 back in, we found out the other root is -1. Just a coincidence that this value of k and the root is the same. That normally doesn't happen. Just happens for this question. So again, put the 4 back in to get what k is, and then put k back in to get your quadratic equation, and then you get your two roots, and you can see that 4 is one of them. What's the other one? -1. And 4 marks, 2 for this one, and 2 for this one. 4 altogether. Add up your page, and you get a total of 6 for that page. Then add up all your pages. Take all the pages and add them up. Take your total and put it over 47. Divide 47 into whatever number you have. Convert it to get a decimal. Move your decimal 2 places right to get a percent. And hopefully your unit on quadratics is working out great. You should know how to solve quadratic. Very, very important. But you can solve by, when you're finished, you can solve by whatever method you wish. Whatever is easiest for you. Factoring is good when you get heavy problems. Quadratic formula is good when you can't see what the factors are. And if you like my video, click the like button, subscribe button, and the notification bell, because there's more videos coming. Visit my website, www.mathfullyexplained.com, to find more information about me, videos, and the content. That's the content that's in my YouTube channel called Math Fully Explained. Thank you for viewing my video. Bye-bye.